Maya K. von Rossum has served as the Delaware River Keeper since 1996, championing the rights of over 17 million people to a free-flowing, clean, and healthy Delaware River and its tributary streams. In 2013, she was one of the original petitioners in the landmark Robinson Township versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania case. Since 2002, she has served as an adjunct professor and director of the Environmental Law Clinic at Temple's Beasley School of Law, which she founded. Von Rossum published the first edition of her book, The Green Amendment, in 2017. She lives in Delaware County, Pennsylvania with her family, and we're very thankful that she came down today. And joining her is newly, freshly elected Delaware State Representative, Kerri Evelyn Harris. We are very happy about that, Kerri. And we had hoped that State Representative Medina Wilson-Anton was going to be able to join us as well, but unfortunately she cannot. Something came up, but we're just as happy to have Kerri with us. So with that, Maya, Kerri.
I should have done that before. Thank you. So it's really an honor to be here. Is that too loud? I got it. Okay, great. And it really is, it's wonderful to be here with Kerri, not just because she's a newly elected representative for all of you here in her private capacity this evening, but if you didn't know, she wrote one of the forewords to the book. She actually wrote the new foreword to the second edition of the book, in addition to the foreword written by Mark Ruffalo. It's really powerful, and it was really an honor that she did that. So just wanted to highlight that. So thank you, Kerri. Okay, so you've already learned a little bit about me. I think the most important thing that I want you to know about me is that I've been an environmental activist and an attorney for 30 years now. And it is as a result of that 30 years of activism that I've experienced the myriad of ways that our current system of environmental protection laws here in the state of Delaware, but also nationwide, how they fundamentally fail us, how they fundamentally fail to protect our communities, to protect our natural resources. And so hence leading me to this new pathway for environmental protection that I'm really pleased to share with you tonight. And this is sort of just a truncated little education session about the concept, but also a little bit about the book. And so I like to start talking about this concept of a green amendment with a story. And I really like to start, sadly, with a sad story, which I call Gina's story. This is actually in the chapter of the book that's entitled Ending Environmental Racism. In the first house lived Gina's sister, Donna, who had tumors all over her body, and Donna's daughter, who was pregnant and repeatedly suffering inexplicable seizures. The next house belonged to Patsy, Gina's cousin, who'd had a basic water softener system in place for a decade. The system itself, along with the shipments of salt that kept it running, was provided by Mount Air Farms, which had agreed to install them in a handful of nearby houses after an investigation found unacceptably high levels of nitrates, which caused cancer and birth defects, among other harms in wells and groundwater. Next was Gina's house, where she lived with her mother. Gina was sick constantly, experiencing frequent gastrointestinal issues and hair loss that left her with permanent bald spots. Gina's daughter had been born with an extra ear, but no one had endured greater suffering or paid a higher price for Mount Air's callously destructive actions and pollution than Gina's son, Kiwanis. Like Gina, Kiwanis had been born with asthma. His case was particularly severe. When your asthma is at its worst, it's like somebody put a plastic bag over your head and just pulled on a string and cut off all your air circulation, says Gina. He really suffered. He just suffered, she added. When Kiwanis left Millsboro after a year to attend school, his condition seemed to improve significantly. But then he came home, and his asthma was once again a daily source of hardship. Despite nebulizers, inhalers, prescription steroids, and an EpiPen, he struggled to keep it under control. On March 5th, 2014, Gina got a frantic phone call. While hanging out in a house full of friends, Kiwanis had suffered an extremely severe asthma attack. They were calling an ambulance. She needed to drive immediately to the hospital. By the time Gina arrived, Kiwanis had passed away. He was just 24 years old. Now, when people hear stories like that, whether they're in the state of Delaware or anywhere across the nation, they say, how is it possible? How is it possible that this kind of story could happen here in the United States of America? Don't we as people here in the US have a right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment? And the fact of the matter is that here in the United States of America, we have all kinds of rights. We have a right to free speech and freedom of religion. We have private property rights. We even have a right to bear arms. But we do not have a right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. We don't have a right to clean water. We don't have a right to clean air. We don't have a right to a stable climate or healthy environments. Instead, what we have here in Delaware and across the US is a system of laws that have been passed by legislators who have focused, rather than focusing on prevention of pollution, degradation, and harm, have passed laws that focus on legalizing pollution, degradation, and harm. It's a system of laws that's filled with gaps. There are a lot of things that aren't even addressed by the laws that we have in place here in Delaware and across the US. And in the laws that we do have, there are massive loopholes that literally industry can drive a truck through and get away with all kinds of things when it comes to polluting and degrading our environment and our bodies. It is a system of laws and governance where environmental racism is real and intentional, where communities of color, low-income communities, indigenous communities are intentionally targeted for highly polluting industrial operations and environmentally degrading activities. They are not disproportionately impacted by pollution and degradation by accident. They're actually disproportionately impacted because of the way this system of laws has been written, interpreted, and intentionally applied. It is a system of laws and governance where very literally children are just an afterthought, and where industry has much greater access to the levers of power than the rest of us. And as a result, under this system of laws, real people suffer real harms. And so in addition to Gina's story, I just wanted to read you a little bit, another story from the book. This is about a story about Lois and Gunnar. It comes from the chapter titled Fracking Away Our Future. In 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic was descending on us, a new study came out. Environmental Health News had noticed a gap in the science and sought to answer an important question. Were fracking chemicals building up in the bodies of local residents? 5 families were selected for the study, including Lois and her 4 children. The results were striking. Not only were the daily lives of Lois and her children being degraded by fracking trucks, smells, and noise and light pollution, but their bodies were being invaded as well. Among the most alarming findings, Lois's then 13-year-old son, Gunnar, had benzene, toluene, naphthalene, and other chemicals coursing through him. The threat posed by this contamination is not benign. It ranges from potential organ damage to reproductive harm, increased cancer risk, and more. And it's not just hidden and future effects that Lois and her kids face. Suffering daily nosebleeds and even coughing up blood clots have been part of her son's life since nearby fracking operations began. As Lois recounted to Environmental Health News, fracking just completely encompasses us. It's not like we can look to our right or our left and say it's not there. And everywhere my children go, school or wherever it is, it's there too. My son Vim is the same age as Lois's Gunner, and I can't help but worry about his future. So we know when we read these stories, when we hear these stories, when we experience these stories in our own communities, right? We read them in the headlines of the news. We know that when it comes to environmental protection, we truly need transformational change. And that's what green amendments are. Green amendments bring forth transformational change when it comes to environmental protection. With the passage of a constitutional green amendment that gets added to the Bill of Rights section of our state constitution, we literally lift up environmental rights so they are given highest constitutional standing. And so they are given the same constitutional recognition and protection that we give to those other fundamental rights we hold dear. Things like the right to free speech, freedom of religion, private property rights. We all know how powerfully those rights are protected because they are recognized and protected in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions. Well, with a constitutional green amendment, we give that same most powerful protection to our rights to clean water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And we make sure that these rights are protected equitably for all communities, regardless of race, ethnicity, tribal membership status, gender, geography, or even generation. And we do make sure that these rights are protected for the generations yet to be born, way in the future, right? We ensure that they too, those children yet to be born too, have a right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. With the addition of a constitutional green amendment to the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions, we strengthen all the laws that are already on the books. But we also create a powerful platform for new laws and new legal protections where there are gaps or loopholes or where needed protections are missing. Constitutional green amendments, though, they don't just transform the law, they also empower environmental activists and activism. Because now when people come forth to advocate for the protection of the communities and the environments that they love, they are not just advocating for the protection of their family, of their forests, of their rivers, of their wetlands, of those critical species that they adore, but they are also advocating for a constitutional right. It's totally transformational for activists, how they feel about what they are fighting for, right? It gives a tremendous sense of empowerment to know that you are fighting for the earth, but that you are also fighting for this very tangible constitutional right. But more than empowering activists, it also changes the way government decision makers view you when you are advocating at a hearing or in public, right? Whether it's a local committee hearing at your town council or at the county, or whether it's to your state legislators. Because now when you have a constitutional right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment that your government officials are constitutionally bound to recognize and protect, when you start advocating for the environment and advocating for your constitutional rights, they have to sit up and they have to actually listen because they have a constitutional duty to protect your environmental rights. Right, so it transforms the conversation on both sides for the activists, but also for the decision maker. The Green Amendment movement that I've been advocating for the last 9 years or so, this is a nationwide movement that with powerful growing strength, but it is a movement that is beginning at the state level. Constitutional amendments are very accessible at the state level. People can reach their legislators and convince them to do the right thing by adding a constitutional environmental rights amendment. State constitutions are literally amended all the time, right? But in addition to getting powerful protection as we advocate for state constitutional green amendments, we are doing the education and the organizing and laying the foundation necessary to ultimately get a federal green amendment. If you want a federal constitutional right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment, 3/4 of the state have to vote for it. If we were to propose a federal green amendment right now, a federal right to clean water and clean air, we know it would fail. And it would suck all the energy, right? All the air out of the room. And it would fail not because people don't care, but because people don't know about this idea yet, right? So we need to do a lot of educating and organizing of our communities and of our legislators to make sure that when the time comes to seek and secure a federal green amendment, that everybody knows what we're talking about and they're ready and primed to pass for it. What better way to do that work than go state by state by state, seeking and securing green amendments at the state level and getting that powerful protection at the state level in the near term? So that's the strategy. We go state by state, get state green amendments, get the powerful protections they provide, and lay the foundation necessary ultimately for a federal green amendment, because we need constitutional recognition and protection at both levels of government. The federal government has a lot of power when it comes to environmental protection. So too does the state. And our Green Amendment movement is really catching on. We have right now green amendments in 3 states already: Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York. They each have their own story. That's in the book. But we also have 15 other states where green amendment language has been proposed. And those are the light green, and more states that are getting interested in coming on board all the time. And the state of Delaware is very much a leader in this Green Amendment movement. This year is going to be the 2nd year when there is a proposal to amend the state constitution's Bill of Rights to recognize and protect the rights of all the people of Delaware, including future generations, to clean water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. We have powerful legislative support. I'm sorry that Representative Wilson Anton was not able to join us. She's one of our powerful legislative champions, but we have youth and activists, some of whom are in this room, that are helping to lead the way in this movement. And we also have a number of powerful organizations, more and more coming on board to help us. But what we ultimately need to get a constitutional right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment here in the state of Delaware, to get the passage of our Delaware Green Amendment, is we need you. We need you to get involved, to be active, and to help support this powerful pathway forward. And with that, I'm going to do one final reading that I think sums it up and hopefully will inspire you to join the movement. There's information on your sheet, on your seats. There's information over at the table. And of course, there's the book that lays it all out. So this is my final reading that I think sums it all up. And of course, I think that because I wrote it. So no matter where you happen to live, I'm here to say that you should dramatically raise your expectations when it comes to the environment. You have a right to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. This right is inherent and indefeasible. It belongs to you. Many politicians rail against entitlements and dismiss millennials as an entitled generation, but they've got it wrong. Entitlement is not a dirty word. It is a recognition of rights. And make no mistake, when it comes to the environment, you are entitled. So I thank you for joining us this evening, for listening to my message. I hope you'll get involved in the movement. And now you're going to get even more inspired by Kerri Evelyn Harris, who again wrote the foreword to the book and has been a lead activist on this effort since its inception here in the state of Delaware.
Good evening, everyone. Am I working? Is this working? Test, 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 test. Oh, like really, really close. It's a little awkward. Maya said everything, but I can say I know many of you, and we've been working on environmental justice work in this state for a long time. For a number of reasons, whether we're seeing the contamination in our own backyards, we're seeing the impact on our loved ones, we're seeing the impact on our economy. It's real. And the first state, what sets us apart is our size, right? We are closely connected to everyone in a very easy way. I don't care where you live. whether you're actually a relation or you work with someone, there is a way to make sure that we all can thrive. And the Green Amendment is that way. I have environmental justice was not my first justice work, right? I worked in many other areas of justice, healthcare, racial justice, criminal justice, you name it, I've worked on it. But the work for it within environmental justice touches everything. And in a state that prioritizes business, and it's important, right? We get a lot of money from corporations, but we cannot. It's not just for the people, but our economy will fail if we don't start taking seriously the impact our decisions are having on our environment. One of our major sources of revenue is tourism. And when we have now 97% of our waterways contaminated, it's just a matter of time before people are going to wonder, how will that impact them? And if people stop showing up to our beaches, that impacts our schools. That impacts our small business. That impacts every facet of our life. You think it's hard to find a doctor now? Wait until they're like, yeah, we're not going to move there for sure. We have to think of better ways to move. And I know that business as usual, not just in this state, but across the nation, has been business first. But we can change that. And it's because we have, not just because we're electing more legislators who already know this, but because legislators who have been there are realizing and learning new things that tell them we need to do business differently. We need to legislate differently. Now is the time. The data is showing us that this is not a sustainable model. The average family in Delaware pays $2,500 additional a year in healthcare costs related to pollution within our state. That's just the families. Think of small businesses. So if those families are spending that amount of money, they're also missing work. If they're missing work, that affects the bottom line of that business. If a student is kept out of school, that school does not get paid for that day that that child is missing, which means that impacts our education system. Indian River is having a growing rate of children with learning disabilities. Nitrates are directly linked to learning disabilities. If you are from Sussex County, the chances are that you are on a water system. The chances are you have nitrates in your system. The chances are it's impacting your body. You, your kids, your grandkids are suffering. Nitrates don't just impact learning, neurological issues. The number of people I hear from on a regular basis who have had a stroke or know somebody who has had a stroke or other neurological disorders, we're going to find that this is directly related back to the pollutants in our environment. People want change. We deserve change. But we need more people on board. We need more people in our working groups that can put pressure on our legislators to say there is another way. Because if we don't change our course, it won't just be our own health. It's going to be the health of our friends, family, neighbor, and our economy. And if some people don't care if one of us gets sick and dies, one of those legislators will care about the economy crippling. We have to reach them however we can to make sure that we have that right to clean air, clean water, a stable environment. And if we can lead as the first state in that, and we can show that impact because we are a small state and we can show how changes can make a big impact quickly, it makes it so the nationwide movement will get a little bit of fuel to go a little bit faster. And that will save that many more of our friends, family, and fellow countrymen. So we have a lot we could talk about. I'm sure we're going to question and answer now. All right, so that's where we're at.
Actually, we have a quick question from the chat, which is, why is Indian River area so impacted by nitrates? So if you could just explain that to folks real quick.
I just told you I was newly elected. Chicken. There you go. It's chicken. Chickens eliminate waste just as we do, and we spray it on our fields, and gets into our water supply. And it's something that we have to figure out. I'm not saying I eat chicken. Not everybody does. There are probably a lot of vegetarians in here. I'm not asking anybody to stop eating chicken or other forms of meat. But what I am saying is it's having a major impact, and we have to figure out better ways to also do poultry.
Good answer.
Okay, thanks. My question has to do here locally in Lewis. We had a meeting not long ago on the subject of a potential tree ordinance. And in the course of that, we learned some interesting things about the United States has twice essentially deforested the entire country, and those forests have had to grow back, which means that we don't have old growth forests. And here in Lewis, I've had an interesting discussion because we had a development on 4th Street that wasn't supposed to happen. And in the course of that, a number of people kept telling me, well, that wasn't always a woodland. That used to be an agricultural field. And I had to point out, well, before it was an agricultural field, it was a woodland that we cut down to build boats and to farm. And then it reverted to a woodland, which wasn't supposed to be developed, but now has been. But in the course of that meeting, I also suggested, why don't we start locally by endorsing a green amendment for our municipality? And it seems to me that's one of the things that people can do, get their local communities to endorse a green amendment for the local communities, and at the same time endorse it for statewide, so we can build local momentum that way. Because here in Lewis, we've had issues about, well, for instance, the city council settled a lawsuit for some $600,000, actually unended. 600,000 was the starting amount that they're paying to developers who sued them, and they didn't point out, we just had to say no because it said in our comprehensive plan that we didn't have to do that. And they could have appealed to the Green Amendment to say, not only are we saying no, but it would be unconstitutional to do that. So I'm all for endorsing it locally.
Before I say anything, do you want to say something? I always defer.
I just want to say about the trees, the governor has an initiative to get more trees planted throughout the state. So trees take a long time to grow, so it's not going to fix it tomorrow, but I wanted to flag that. Also, I don't think that there's anything wrong. In fact, I would encourage local endorsement, but any Sussex, I don't know if majority of folks are Sussex County, but especially if we're going at the county council level, it could be a little harder, but possibly at the municipal level, and that would help to put pressure on our statewide. In the state of Delaware, to pass an amendment, we need the majority of our legislature, which will include at least 2 Republicans. So 2 Republicans, meaning 2 people from Sussex County, right? And so as much pressure as we can put in this area would be key. And I do want to flag that helping to lead here in the state is Boost Delaware. So Nisa Cartagena is there, and which is a chapter of the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition. So if you guys want to join and help put pressure, her whole charge is to help with that organizing effort throughout the state. And you know, there's financial backing that we can help with that as well. So please reach out afterwards, get signed up, join the working group, and we can put as much pressure as seems right for your municipality.
Great, thank you. So, yeah, so I sort of heard two things in what you were saying, and maybe I misunderstood or maybe I understood. So one thing is absolutely 100%. We want local government, as you said, to pass resolutions to make very clear support for the Green Amendment. That provides powerful incentive for the legislators to vote support. Great strategy. But if what I think I heard you saying with different language was also pass a Green Amendment at the local level, by definition, you can't do that because a Green Amendment is a constitutional amendment that gets added to the Bill of Rights section of the state constitution. So a local, the county municipalities, they can't amend the state constitution, but they could use the same kind of guiding principles and concepts, right, to pass their own version to ensure that at the local level, they are more firmly protecting the environment and environmental rights and addressing environmental justice issues. That being said, one of the powerful things about having a constitutional Green Amendment is that it will mandate that every government official at every level of government respect and protect the environmental rights of all the people equitably and protect the natural resources of the state for present and future generations. So when this amendment gets secured in the Delaware State Constitution, it will have power at the local level. And I just want to give you one example because you so wonderfully talked about how if there was a state Green Amendment, this could be utilized at the local level to empower better decision making. And I want to give you one example of exactly how that has actually happened in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A constitutional challenge, a constitutional impact is a high hurdle, right? It is not going to be a couple of people cutting down some trees. So if people are worried that, if I cut down some trees on my property, oh my gosh, I'm crossing the line on the Constitution. The Constitution is about government action, government power, bigger picture stuff. But it also is about making sure that our government officials fully and proactively interpret and apply existing laws to the greatest benefit for the environment, making sure that they're utilizing every law to advance environmental rights. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I actually think I have a picture of it. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there is a municipality, Marple Township, just outside of the city of Philadelphia. This is a quickly urbanizing township that had one last patch of green space. Actually, in that green space is both what's known as a high quality stream in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but there was also an old growth beech tree forest right in the heart of this urbanizing community. And there was a proposal to develop this woodland. They were going to cut it down, the majority of it down, and they were going to develop it. For years, the local community advocated the local town council not to approve that development project and said, use your town ordinances and what they say to greatest effect. If you properly interpret and apply these town ordinances, you can say no to this project. And in fact, the state constitution in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania requires you to protect environmental rights and to protect the state's natural resources for present and future generations. So you should be interpreting and applying that local municipal law through the lens of fulfilling your governmental duty to protect the environmental rights of present and future generations and the natural resources of the state. And after several years of advocacy, do you know what? The town council got up and voted no. And they used as a mainstay of their decision to say no to the development project Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution that recognizes the rights of all Pennsylvanians to pure water, that's their language, clean air, and a healthy environment. They said no to the development project. That then created space for more activity and activism to now get this site protected as natural open space, permanently protected. So that's just one example of how the local town council, it wasn't the Constitution alone that mandated the no vote. It was the Constitution helping the local municipal officials properly and most effectively interpret and apply local law and state law to be empowered to say no in the way their community wanted them to. So.
To kind of follow up on that, there's a question in the chat. It says, can you share the status of the Green Amendment in New Jersey? And do you know which legislatures are supportive, if any?
So, so for every state where we have the most progress on a Green Amendment proposal, there's a website or at least a web page. So to get all the legislators in New Jersey and know what their status is, if you go to www.njgreenamendment.org, right? That's how it goes. The 2 letters of the state, greenamendment.org. You will be able to go to the website, and we actually list out all the legislators who are in support. Actually, half of the New Jersey legislature, including 10 Republicans, are actually co-sponsors of the New Jersey Green Amendment proposal. The proposal was first put forth in 2017. That was the first state since we started our Green Amendment movement to put forth a Green Amendment proposal. And yet at this point, despite that, it's been around for 5 years now. Half of the legislature is co-sponsors, 10 Republicans. We can't get a hearing because the legislative leadership in the state of New Jersey is not scheduling the Green Amendment for a hearing before the committees that, have it within their jurisdiction. You can't get a hearing. People can't testify. Legislators can't hear what the people have to say, and they can't vote on it. If it can't be passed out of committee, it's stuck. So legislative leadership in the state of New Jersey is using this procedural power to stop the Green Amendment in its tracks and have been doing so since its proposal. We actually have seen that kind of procedural abuse of power in a number of states. So we need to make sure that we don't see that happen here in the state of Delaware. But to know exactly which legislators, again, njgreenamendment.org, you'll be able to find that. But that's where it stands in the state of New Jersey.
So which do you think will be the next state to adopt a Green Amendment?
I always think it's the state I'm standing in. So there we go. I'm in Delaware right now. It's really hard to tell. It's very interesting, right? We have New Jersey, we have Delaware, we have Florida, we have Hawaii, we have Washington, we have Maine. Those are states that people expect to hear this kind of proposal. But we also have New Mexico. This year we added Nevada, Texas, Tennessee, Iowa, right? These are states that are traditionally much more conservative, where there are Green Amendment proposals, and people are often surprised to hear that. But it doesn't matter what your political persuasion, right? It doesn't matter how conservative your politics or your beliefs or what your eating beliefs are or your religious beliefs are or what your wealth is. We all need clean water, clean air, and a healthy environment for happy, healthy, thriving lives and economies. So that's why I say we see such a wonderful diversity of people coming together around the Green Amendment nationwide. And we will see that here in the state of Delaware, because when it comes to the environment, right, we're all in it together in common cause.
Do we have any? Oh, okay, let me come around to you.
Thanks, Maya. This was great. You've been an environmental scientist for a while now, 20 years, I think you said. 20 plus. Activist. And I assume you went into that with obviously you have a concern about the environment and interest in the environment, but the passion you bring today, I would imagine, has grown, since you first started as an activist. Are there certain touchstones that really propelled you to want to devote such energy and passion to this project?
So I think that I probably had the same love and energy for environmental protection since I really was a little child. It probably just manifested itself differently. And I really have a love for the earth, and I have a love for justice. And I think it's the two of those that come married together that sort of blends into me being who I am. I don't know what I was like 30 years ago when I started, but I think I was pretty similar. I don't really know. I think there are a lot of There are a lot of stories I have in my head, you know, that I think are powerful and important to me. I think when it comes to the Green Amendment movement, why I really am so dedicated to this, even though it's really hard. There's so many great activists and legislators that believe in this movement. But when it comes to philanthropy, which is really needed to move a movement like this in a state or nationwide, the philanthropic community is like nowhere. So a lot of it's my husband and I, right? Like just really believing in this. But the reason why I believe in it so much is because I saw in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania how powerful this pathway was. At the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, we have been fighting against fracking for years. One of the reasons why there's no fracking anywhere within the boundaries of the Delaware River watershed is because of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. But outside of the watershed in Pennsylvania, fracking was just blowing forward because the laws at the state level and the federal level allowed it. And in 2012, even though fracking was moving apace, the fracking leaders themselves went behind closed doors and they wrote a piece of legislation that was literally a gift basket to the industry that was going to make it even easier for them to frack anywhere and everywhere they wanted to. And that law got passed by the Pennsylvania legislature and was signed by the governor in 2012. We knew at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network that we had to take it on, even though we didn't have fracking in our watershed. Fracking anywhere is bad for all of us everywhere. But you also pump up the pressure for fracking elsewhere in Pennsylvania. You're going to pump up the pressure to bring it into the Delaware River watershed. So we knew we had to challenge and defeat this law. And we were thinking, like, how do you defeat a law that's passed by the legislature? There's not, right? You can protest it. That doesn't do anything. You can try to get the legislators to try to repeal it or amend it. They had just passed this law. They were pro-fracking. They weren't going to do that. You can sit down and shut up and take it. Well, that does you no good. You could try to elect better people to office, but by the time you get better people elected to office to try to change the law down the line, too much damage is done. So what could we do? And we remembered that in the Pennsylvania Constitution, there was a long ignored provision that recognized and protected the environmental rights of all Pennsylvanians that I talked about earlier. So we grabbed hold of that law that had been ignored for 42 years, pretty much. It was pretty much a dead letter, just a policy statement. We grabbed hold of it and we challenged that pro-fracking law and said that this law is going to inflict so much harm on the environment that will violate the environmental rights of the people of Pennsylvania. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed with us. And we stopped that law in its tracks before the provisions we were challenging could ever be implemented. They were declared unconstitutional and all that devastating harm was avoided. And it was really with that victory, seeing how powerful, we would not have defeated that law in the way we did if we didn't have the Constitution on our side. That was what really propelled me to see the power of this pathway. When I then looked at every constitution across the nation and found that only Montana had a provision of this same kind and quality, that's when I knew that I had to change that and try to change it in every state across the nation. And just last year, right in November 2021, we got our Green Amendment passed in New York. So one additional state down, Delaware next, right? So, but thank you for asking that question. It really was seeing the power as an attorney, and an activist, seeing the power of this pathway.
Hi, so not so much of a question, more I guess a comment for everyone who's here still. But honestly, the best way to get something changed in the state would be to really just bug your state, like congressperson, representative, senator, doesn't matter who. If enough people do bug them, and I mean, it's downright just calling them directly. There are lines, I think, online that you can find to get to them. I do find that's probably one of the best ways is trying to really get in touch with them, you know, and trying to explain why it matters to you and to, again, trying to get a coalition of your neighbors or whomever to try and make a case for it, basically. And I really think that's, especially down here where there are a lot more Republican Congress people. I think that's probably our best bet. But on top of that, kind of going back to this other gentleman's question about the trees and such like that with the ordinances and such. So local municipalities and also like counties can put in place something that is called a stretch code, which basically takes the state's like energy code or some other environmental code, and it can go above and beyond that code. And so that is another way that we could, as a like city or as a county, do better. And so that's another option as well. Just wanted to throw that out there. If you guys need to reach out to your local politicians, that's just another option that you can use to maybe try and make change.
I'm really glad that you said that. And that's really what our Boost Coalition, right, is about. This is organizations coming together in terms of the Green Amendment. So Anissa, do you want to say a few things?
Oh, of course. I'll stand up so everybody can see me. Hi, I'm Anissa. Oh, can I hear me? Oh, yeah. I'm Anissa. I am the campaign coordinator and organizer for Boost Delaware. And something that we're actually working on right now is the Green Amendment in Delaware. And I just kind of want to feed off a little bit of what you said. You are right. It is about, you know, reaching out to your legislators, reaching out to your representatives, reaching out to your senators. But more importantly, it starts at home. It starts with talking to your children talk to their friends talk to their parents talk to their friends talk to, you know, their bosses, and it goes around like that. If only 4 of us out here reach out to our representatives, it's not going to make an impact. But if 400 of us reach out to our senators and our representatives, that's going to be the change. You know, every day that I go out and I do my job and just in my own personal capacity, something about the environment always comes up. So I have really bad asthma. Actually, I was kind of dying over here. I don't know if it's the Lewis air. I'm not down in Sussex enough, but the air does feel a little bit thick down here. Now, if you live down here, I know you're probably not noticing the change. But for me, who came from Kent County, I can instantly notice a change in the environment, which is why it's so important. You know, one of my mom's favorite sayings is, "You are your environment." You know, if you're living here long enough, you may not notice how it's affecting you every single day. And I definitely want to encourage everyone to get involved. We have tons of resources. I know everyone is not the best at displaying their message or, you know, making it passionate, but we do have pre-written things that all you have to do is just put in your name, your email, and your address, and it'll directly send out an email about everything of why we need the Green Amendment to your representatives and to your senators. We make it very, very easy. You know, you can even start by just texting, you know, a friend or a sibling and saying, "Hey, you know, just want to flag, there's this bill, it's called HB 220. It hasn't been entered yet so far, but hopefully with the work of all of you and all of you who are online, we can make that happen." But it really comes with us coming together. And I know that we have kind of said that a lot, but I just really want to emphasize that, you know, this is a very great event, but it doesn't just stop here. And it continues to go the more we go. So Boost Delaware, we are small, but we're mighty, and we definitely want to grow more. So if you're interested in participating and kind of getting some events going, so we can spread the message about HB 220, so we can guarantee that you have that that right, that constitutional right to clean air, to clean soil, to a clean environment, then please reach out to me after this, and I would love to get working with you. So our website is currently up and running, but we do have a social media account. We have 3. Our Facebook is Boost Delaware. Our Instagram is Boost Delaware as well. And then we have a TikTok that we're currently working on, which is Boost Delaware. We're trying to meet people where they are. So we're not only just trying to get, you know, millennials, we're trying to get our Generation Z, because as you may know, this is what we're growing up in. You know, and for Generation Z that has lived their entire lives without having these unalienable rights, it's really important for us to reach them there. Boost. So Boost is BOOST, and it stands for Building Opportunities for Our Shared Tomorrow, because no matter where you are, we do have a shared tomorrow.
And if you go to, like I told you, the most forward states, we have a website for each state. So degreenamendment.org is the website for Delaware, where we have additional resources and actions and opportunities. And we actually don't have it up yet, but we will put up information on how to connect directly with Boost, so that you can connect with this local coalition, of which Green Amendments for the Generations is a part, right? This is all a community effort. So, you know, it's all cross-pollination, and we can help get you to do the letters to directly to your legislators and also make sure that you're looped into the movement.
So I completely misspoke. I apologize. So we actually do have a website. It is the midatlanticjustice.org. If you search that up, you will come to the MAJIC page, which is MAJC, and then you will click on the Delaware chapter. It won't say Boost because we're currently in a process of changing it, but it will say the Green Amendment, and all of that information is coming right over to Boost and will be updated within the next few weeks. Yep, the Mid-Atlantic. Yeah, midatlanticjustice.org. When you are going online, it will like have something that says magic. So just to make it a little bit easier, but if you put in your information there, it will come right to me and we can definitely get working on it.
Kerri, can you tell us what is the status of HB 220? Is that the bill?
I'm just
Yes.
asking one of them to speak,
Yes.
just so I'm not mixing.
Yeah, I can. Okay.
So currently with the current status as of right now is Maya, myself, and a few others in our working groups. We are currently working with the prime sponsor on the language of the bill. Something that is very important, which I'm pretty sure Maya can attest to, is we want to make sure that this bill is not only just a word bill, but something that's impactful, meaning that once it's in place, it is going to make change. And we're going to be able to do it in a way that's not only efficient, but effective. We definitely believe in people over profit, and that's kind of where we are as of right now.
So just to add a little bit, so last year there was a language proposal. The legislators, particularly those in opposition, raised questions and concerns. And so those questions and concerns have been addressed in the context of the language, as well as the introductory language to the language, what they call the whereas clauses. And we're anticipating that the proposal is going to be coming forth in the very near term. And I'm not sure, we don't know what number it will be at this point. It'll still be HB 220. But I think it's there, the protection is going to be the same powerful constitutional protection, even if you see a few word modifications. But I think at this point, we're pretty much on track to be in line with where we were last year.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions.
All three of you did an excellent job tonight. But may I ask you, where did you grow up? You don't have to tell me your exact town. Is it
Sure.
New Jersey, Delaware?
Pennsylvania.
Does
Yeah.
Pennsylvania have fracking right now?
Yes.
Interesting, right behind you, you kept that screen up there. You're an elected official. You know about people's property rights.
Yes.
So I'd be really interested to see how that development was stopped. So maybe that's something as a blueprint we can use down here, different situations. Because the 20 people or so are in this room. I grew up in Northern Bergen County. The massive growth there in the 60s, 70s, people getting out of New York City. Same thing is happening down here, but it's happening for one reason. People think everything is so nice here because real estate taxes are low. I've said to state legislators, increase my taxes 4 times. It will stop the growth. I'll have no problem paying it. That leads me into not my question so much, but a comment. When I was sitting here listening to both of you talk about, the environment and all, nitrates, I said, there's no industry here. It's all moved out of the state. But you're right about chicken farms. If we put requirements, regulations on chicken farms to use organic material, the chicken cost is going to triple, quadruple perhaps. Then you're going to be on the other side of the fence, people complaining, I'm just going to use a bad word, but complaining about the price. Just like, we're complaining about the price of gas and whatever. So I brought up in a family, probably very similar to you two, you three, that the environment first, education, the 3 E's in the economy. It all has to be worked out because you need business, you need food that's cheap, you need fuel that's cheap, and etc. So what you laid out here tonight was a little confusing because of all these websites and whatever. If you could get it to Rebecca, and I can stop by tomorrow, which one, because I'm confused, who to
Mhm.
call and whatever. Now, on the local level, we have two new elected officials. You know, they're Democrats. Huxtable and I think Shelby Park or Parker Shelby, I get confused. Yeah, I mean, and Pete Sweatcross, who's been here for a long time. They're three Democrats. But you're right. I mean, I'm a Republican. I come from a very Republican family and environment, both in New Jersey when I moved down here, where, well, not down here so much anymore. But we care about the environment because we all pay for it, health-wise or whatever. What I like about seeing PA being one of the green amendment states is that it's a heavy industrial state and we're downhill. So their pollution is coming down the Delaware, you know, and this country's come a long way. I'm 68 years old, grew up in northern New Jersey. I couldn't swim in the Hudson River. I hear you can now. I don't know if I would, but, or to eat the fish out of the Hudson River, but I don't know if I eat the fish out of these lakes and ponds, but rivers. But the thing is, we have come a long way. We need a long way to go, but we also need the whole world to do this. And that's going to be very hard.
So,
I didn't have a question in there. It's
Yeah.
more or less, I was brought up that Shawnee Indian, he gets credit for it. Environment is not ours, it belongs to future generations yet unborn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so for the information, you've got this sheet, websites on there, details are on there. Over on the side, website and details are on there. Okay, if you do www.degreenamendment.org, if you buy the book, it's in there, right? Go there. You will get to everywhere you need to be engaged in the state of Delaware. Something very important that you said is absolutely, you cannot have a healthy economy without a healthy environment. And that's one of the things that the Green Amendment does. It ensures that when economic development happens, it happens in a way that's protective of the environment because the two are inextricably intertwined, right? So this is not about killing economic development. It's about ensuring it happens in a way that is healthy and will protect present and future generations. The other thing that you noted is property rights, right? So property rights are in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions. There is a constitution, there are constitutional property rights in the Delaware Constitution and the federal Constitution. And so property rights have primacy when people want to do things that will impact primacy, property rights, when government wants to do things that will impact property rights. And there's no counterbalance for the environment. And yet we know environmental pollution and degradation has devastating consequences for people living in their own homes on their property. The pollution comes in, the stormwater runs off, floods them out, all kinds of, the nitrates get into their drinking water supplies, all kinds of things happen. But there's no counterbalance for the environment. And so property rights often takes primacy. And all somebody has to do is say, government official, you're going to impact my property rights. And government officials shut down, right? Because they know that there's this constitutional obligation to protect property rights. When we add environmental rights to the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution, there's now a counterbalance. So it's not saying that the environment will trump property rights, and it's not saying the property will trump environmental rights. It's saying that you have to find a way to protect them both. But you cannot sacrifice property rights or environmental rights for economic development, right? The money does not get the primacy. The environment and the people get the primacy, and you have to find a way to do your economic development that protects the environment at the same time. And I would suggest to you, in almost every circumstance, you can do that. There are a few situations like fracking, you can't frack safely. You can create energy safely, but you can't frack safely. But when it comes to Pennsylvania, fracking got there before we had a living, breathing, thriving Green Amendment. So we're in a different posture. But if we had a living, breathing, thriving Green Amendment first, I would suggest to you the fracking story probably would have played out differently.
What's your name, sir? Yeah, Roy, Anissa, get Roy. We need all the Republicans to sign on as part of the group. That's going to be key. And if we can show that this is a red, blue, and everybody in between alliance, that makes much more of an impact. I know where you're from. I grew up in a small town called Peekskill, also on the Hudson River. But what I can say is industry's smart. They market really well, right? throughout the pandemic, industry has regularly used against us things like the supply chain issue and things like that to say, oh, it's impacting our bottom line, and yet making record profits, right? There's a thing that is important to me, which is to get filters on the vent systems in our chicken houses, which are said to be able to cut our the scents by 90%, right? Because everybody loves that odor, right? And then the emissions by 70 to 80%. The industry pushes back because they say if one state gets it, then everybody's going to get it, and it's going to cost us millions of dollars. Woo! Right? And that sounds big to us because we're not all millionaires, but they're billionaires. Millions compared to billions is nothing. If they try to tell us that regulations that make it so that their farmers do better, that the chickens are healthier, that their consumers are healthier so they buy chicken longer is impacting their bottom line, then we have to call them on it. And if we're living in a capitalist society, then we control markets, which means we push back. We don't shop at and purchase the chicken that is overpriced. We look at stock market values and say, wait a minute, you are making record profits. This is having no impact, in calling them on it. Because at the end of the day, there is no regulation that we're going to put in place that is going to impact them that greatly. Billions of dollars in profit is not going to be touched by the regulation we put in place to help their economy, their bottom line, by making sure they have healthy employees, that their employees have healthy families, that their employees are properly educated by school systems that are properly funded because their kids aren't missing school for health issues caused by environmental injustices. The list goes on and on and on. And so we need to push back on that narrative because it's truly a fallacy and we've fallen for it for far too long.
All right, just to be respectful of our guest time and also the time of the folks who are online, we're just going to ask the last question from online and then wrap up for our online folks. And then they're going to be staying a few minutes afterwards to sign the book. So the final question online is, in Delaware, how many legislative years does it take to amend the Constitution? And they guessed 3.
So that's a trick question. That's a trick question because it depends on if we do it back to back, right? So you can vote on it right now, and then you can miss a vote, and then you have to go back to the drawing board. So it's technically 2 consecutive general assemblies, right? So what that means is right now we're in the 152nd General Assembly. Somewhere in this General Assembly, we have to pass it. And then we have to pass it again in the 153rd, right? So it might, if it fails the first half of the 153rd, we have to go into that next year. So the question is how quickly it passes. And it could be 2 consecutive years, it could be 3, it could be 4. It all depends on us passing 2 consecutive sessions.
But if we pass it this year or next year, then from now until we get it before the people, it could be 3 years. So if it's passed this year or next year, one or the other in the 152nd legislative session, and then it gets passed in the 153rd legislative session in year 1, it would then go before the people.
No, not in the state
No.
of Delaware. You just have to do 2 consecutive general assemblies. Done.
And that's it, and done.
Yes.
Right, not in Delaware. So legislators, not the people, but people make the legislators vote. So it can be in 3 years. That's as soon as you could get it done, but that's pretty darn soon. And let me tell you, in the state of New York, it took them 4 years. And then right now we're already starting to see the powerful benefits. People are getting constitutional protection for threats and harms that up until that point, they were not able to get addressed through advocacy or law. And now with their New York Green Amendment, they're getting decisions that are making change. So once you get it, it starts to work fast.
So don't give up. So no matter what happens this session, we need everybody on board for next session, because if we pass it next session, we just have to pass it the very next one and we're done, right? And so let this be your momentum, but know that no matter what happens this time, don't let it be a downer. It could definitely be an upper if it passes, but don't let it be a downer because we have 2024. And that would be actually perfect because it's fresh in people's minds and it'll be easier to pass in 25.
All right. Well, with that, I would like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank everyone in the room and then the folks online.